I spent 3 years being the perfect executive assistant, anticipating needs before they were spoken. Tonight, my boss didn't thank me. He fired me. He told me to leave the building, to disappear into the storm. But when my car crashed into the ravine, he didn't call an ambulance. He came for me himself, with eyes glowing red in the darkness. Crouched in the wreckage, he gave me a choice that would shatter my humanity: drink or die. I thought I was just signing a severance package. I didn't know I was signing away my soul to a vampire king. The rain had turned savage by the time I reached the executive floor, each droplet hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows like fingernails demanding entry. My heels clicked against marble that cost more than my yearly salary, echoing through corridors designed to make mortals feel small. I'd walked this path every morning for 3 years, carrying coffee that had to be exactly 142 degrees, answering emails before Cyprian St even thought to ask the questions. Tonight, the building felt different, hungry. The double doors to his office stood open, never a good sign. "You summoned me, Mr. St. Cyr." My voice came out steadier than my pulse. The formal address tasted like ash. We'd been past formalities for months now, ever since that charity gala, when his hand had lingered at the small of my back, and I'd felt something ancient stir beneath his touch. He stood silhouette against the storm, hands clasped behind his back in that aristocratic way that made him look like he'd stepped from a Victorian portrait. The city sprawled below us, oblivious to the predator surveying it from the 93rd floor. "Close the door, Eulalia." The full name. My stomach dropped. I obeyed, and the click of the latch sounded like a cell door. The office smelled different tonight, copper and something floral, like funeral lilies. His desk was pristine as always, not a paper out of place, but the antique letter opener had been moved. Small detail, wrong detail. 3 years, he said, still not turning. "You've been impeccable, efficient, discreet beyond measure." Past tense. Oh God, past tense. Have I done something wrong? The words scraped out of my throat. "The Thorn contract. I triple-checked every clause like you asked. If there's an error, there is no error in your work." He turned then, and the lightning chose that moment to illuminate his face. Cyprian St. was beautiful the way cathedrals were beautiful, cold, eternal, designed to make you want to kneel. Pale skin that never saw sun, eyes so dark they swallowed light, cheekbones sharp enough to cut. The error is in my judgment. My fingers found the back of the leather chair, gripping hard enough that my knuckles went white. "I don't understand." "You will." He moved then, crossing the space between us with that unnatural grace I'd always attributed to expensive breeding and personal trainers. Up close, I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Silas has prepared your severance, 6 months' salary. Non-disclosure agreements have been updated. You'll sign them now." The room tilted. "What? Cyprian, what are you, Mr. St. Cyr?" The correction came sharp as a slap. "We are not familiar. We have never been familiar. That was your mistake, Miss Vane, and mine, for allowing the pretense." Allowing the pretense. As if those late nights reviewing contracts while he watched me with that hungry intensity had been nothing. As if I'd imagined the way his fingers had traced my wrist when passing documents, lingering over my pulse like he was counting heartbeats. "You're firing me because I..." Heat flooded my face. "Because I misread." "I'm firing you because you ask too many questions." He returned to his desk, putting distance between us with deliberate precision. "You notice things, Eulalia, details that others miss. It makes you exceptional at your work. It also makes you dangerous." "Dangerous?" A laugh bubbled up, edged with hysteria. I'm an executive assistant, not a corporate spy. Everything I know because you told me. Precisely. He opened a drawer, withdrew an envelope thick with papers, which is why you'll sign these documents, agreeing never to discuss the nature of my business dealings, my personal habits, or any observations you may have made during your tenure. The severance is generous. Take it and disappear, Miss Vane. Tonight, the storm intensified, rain now sheeting against the windows in waves. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. And if I refuse, something flickered across his face, regret, maybe, or hunger. Hard to tell with shadows playing across those inhuman features. Had I always known, on some level, that he wasn't quite right? That no human moved that smoothly, spoke that precisely, looked that ageless? You won't refuse. His voice dropped to a register that vibrated in my chest. Because you're intelligent enough to recognize when you're outmatched. Sign the papers. Take the money. Forget you ever worked here. Forget. The word tasted bitter. 3 years of my life. And you want me to just, yes. He was in front of me again, too fast, impossibly fast, and his hand caught my chin, tilting my face up. His skin was cold, so cold. Forget the late nights. Forget the way I watched you. Forget whatever foolish notions you've entertained about what exists between us. There is nothing between us, Eulalia. There can never be anything between us. Do you understand? I should have been terrified. His grip was iron, his eyes had gone black as pitch, and every instinct I possessed screamed predator. But underneath the fear, something else coiled hot in my belly, want, reckless and stupid. Let me go, I whispered. He released me like I'd burned him, stepping back with such violence that papers scattered from his desk. Get out. Sign the documents with Silas and get out of this building. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't. His voice cracked, the first imperfection I'd ever heard. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. I grabbed the envelope with shaking hands, pride warred with confusion, anger with hurt, but underneath it all was the sick certainty that I was being protected from something, that this cruelty was somehow kindness. You're afraid, I said, and watched his expression shudder. Not of me. For me. Out. Now. The storm swallowed me the moment I hit the street. My car was 3 blocks away in the parking garage, and I was soaked through before I'd made it half a block. The city had emptied, sensible people safe in their homes, while I stumbled through a downpour that felt biblical. The garage was a concrete tomb, my footsteps echoing off oil-stained floors. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my keys twice before managing to unlock the door. The engine turned over with a reluctant cough. The mountain road home had always been treacherous. Tonight, it was suicide. I should have waited, should have called a cab, should have done anything except point my sedan toward the winding pass with visibility at 0, and my vision blurred by tears I refused to acknowledge. The deer appeared out of nowhere. I swerved. The wheel spun. The guardrail exploded into stars. Then I was falling, tumbling, the world a kaleidoscope of metal and glass, and the peculiar clarity that comes when death reaches out its hand. This is it, I thought. This is how it ends. The impact stole everything, breath, thought, the ability to scream. Pain bloomed white-hot through my chest, my leg everywhere and nowhere. Something warm trickled down my face. Blood. Definitely blood. Through the shattered windshield, through the rain and the darkness and the impossible angle of my broken car, I saw eyes, red eyes, watching, waiting. The eyes didn't blink. They hung in the darkness beyond my shattered windshield like twin embers, unmoving, impossibly steady against the chaos of rain and twisted metal. My chest burned with each shallow breath. Something vital had broken inside me. I could feel it in the wet rattle of my lungs, the way warmth spread across my ribs, in a pattern too liquid to be anything but internal bleeding. I should have been terrified, should have screamed, but the pain had pushed me into a strange, crystalline space where everything felt both immediate and impossibly distant. The airbag had deployed, then deflated, leaving a chemical smell that mixed with the copper tang of blood and the ozone scent of the storm. The red eyes moved closer, not walking, gliding, as if the rain itself parted to let him through. Cyprian. Of course it was, Cyprian. His face appeared in the broken window frame, water streaming down features that looked carved from marble in the lightning's intermittent flash. No umbrella, no coat, just that immaculate suit, somehow untouched by the deluge, and those eyes, God, those eyes, burning with something that made my broken ribs ache for entirely different reasons. Don't move. His voice cut through the storm's roar with preternatural clarity. Your left lung is compromised. Movement will accelerate the bleeding. How? The word came out as a wet cough. Pain exploded through my chest, white-hot and all-consuming. I tasted iron. He was inside the car before I could blink. One moment outside, the next crouched in the passenger seat, the space too small for his frame, yet somehow accommodating him anyway. The overhead light had died in the crash, but I could see him perfectly in the darkness. Every angle of his face, every thread of his suit, the way his jaw clenched as his gaze traveled over my injuries with clinical precision. The steering column has you pinned. His fingers hovered over my chest, not quite touching. 3 ribs broken, punctured lung, fractured femur, severe concussion. He paused, and something flickered across his features. You're dying, Eulalia. The words should have sparked panic. Instead, I felt only a strange, distant curiosity. You followed me. I did. Why? His hand finally made contact, palm flat against my sternum. Heat radiated from his touch, searing through my soaked blouse. Because I'm a fool. The world tilted. Not the car, that was already at an impossible angle, nose down in the ravine, but reality itself. His other hand slid behind my neck, cradling my skull with a gentleness that contradicted the inhuman strength I could feel thrumming beneath his skin. This will hurt, he said. What will? He tore the steering column away from my chest. The scream locked in my throat, strangled by agony, so complete it whited out thought. Distantly, I heard metal shrieking, plastic shattering, the groan of the car's frame as Cyprian peeled it apart like paper. My vision tunneled, darkness creeping in from the edges. Stay with me. His voice anchored me, pulled me back from the edge. Eulalia, look at me. I forced my eyes open. He was closer now, close enough that I could see my own reflection in his eyes, pale, bloodied, already half ghost. Close enough to see that his pupils weren't round. They were vertical slits, like a cat's, like a predator's, like nothing human had ever possessed. What are you? The question bubbled up through blood and broken tissue. His smile was terrible and beautiful. Damned. Then he bit his own wrist. The movement was savage, efficient. His teeth, too sharp, too long, impossible, tore through his own flesh with a sound like fabric ripping. Blood welled black in the darkness, and he pressed the wound to my lips. Drink. I tried to turn away. His hand tightened on the back of my neck, holding me still. Drink or die. Those are your options. The blood touched my tongue. Everything changed. It didn't taste like blood. Not the copper penny taste of biting your cheek, or the salt metal of a split lip. This was wine and smoke, and something ancient, something that sang through my veins like electricity and made every nerve ending ignite. The pain didn't disappear. It transformed, became something I could breathe through, something manageable. My hands came up without conscious thought, gripping his forearm, holding his wrist to my mouth as I swallowed. Once, twice, the broken pieces inside me shifted, began to knit, the sensation so foreign and overwhelming that I would have sobbed if I could have stopped drinking long enough. Enough. He pulled away, and I heard myself whimper at the loss. Any more and you'll turn. Turn. The word rattled around my skull, trying to find purchase. Turn into what? But I knew. God help me. I knew. He lifted me from the wreckage as if I weighed nothing. The movement should have been agony. My leg was definitely broken. I could see the unnatural angle, even through my torn slacks. But the pain had receded to a dull roar. His blood was doing something, rewriting something fundamental in my cells, and the wrongness of it warred with the relief. The rain had intensified, if that was possible. It fell in sheets so thick I couldn't see more than a few feet. But Cyprian moved through it with absolute certainty, carrying me up the ravine slope that should have been unclimbable in these conditions. His feet found purchase on mud and loose rock without hesitation. He didn't slip, didn't stumble, moved like gravity was a suggestion rather than a law. Where are you taking me? My voice sounded stronger. Wrong. The wet rattle had disappeared from my lungs. Somewhere safe. A hospital would ask questions neither of us can answer. He reached the road, where a black car idled with its hazards on. Not the Bentley from earlier. Something older, more predatory. A vintage Jaguar that gleamed despite the downpour. And you don't need a hospital anymore. He was right. I could feel it in the way my ribs had stopped screaming, the way my breathing had evened out. The broken femur still throbbed, but even that pain was fading, replaced by a deep bone-level ache that felt more like healing than injury. The back door opened before we reached it. A figure emerged, tall, gaunt, with skin like old parchment and eyes that reflected the lightning with an amber glow. He held an umbrella, though he positioned it over me rather than himself. Master. His voice was a dry rasp, accent indeterminate. The stronghold is prepared. Thank you, Silas. Cyprian slid me into the back seat with the same careful gentleness. The leather was butter soft, the interior smelling of old wood and older money. He climbed in beside me, and Silas closed the door with a soft click before taking the driver's seat. The car moved before I heard the engine start. I should have been asking questions, demanding answers. Instead, I found myself studying Cyprian's profile in the dashboard's ambient glow. The perfect line of his jaw, the way his wet hair curled slightly at his collar, the absolute stillness of his chest. He wasn't breathing. How long? The question came out steadier than I felt. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. 243 years, give or take a decade. 2 centuries. The number was absurd, impossible, but no more impossible than the fact that I'd been dying 10 minutes ago, and now felt stronger than I had in years. No more impossible than the vertical slits of his pupils, or the way he'd torn through a steering column like tissue paper. And you run a tech company. Hysteria bubbled up in my throat, came out as a laugh that sounded broken even to my own ears. You're a vampire CEO. That's practical. He turned to face me fully, and the weight of his attention was a physical thing. The world changes. We change with it, or we die. There are others. Not many. Fewer every year. Something dark crossed his features. The High Council sees to that. The car took a turn too fast, but I didn't slide on the seat. Silas drove with the same preternatural skill Cyprian had displayed climbing the ravine. Through the rain-streaked windows, I caught glimpses of the city falling away, replaced by dense forest and narrow roads that wound up into the mountains. Where is this stronghold? 30 minutes from your apartment. You've driven past the access road 100 times without seeing it. He reached out, fingers ghosting over my forehead. I flinched, and he froze. You're still bleeding, superficial, but it needs attention. His touch was cool, not cold, cool, like marble on a summer day. I let him brush my hair back, let him examine the gash along my hairline that I'd forgotten about in the chaos of larger injuries. His jaw tightened. Leander will answer for this. Leander? The name meant nothing to me. Thorn, the deer wasn't chance, Eulalia. It was herded onto that road. Deliberately, precisely timed. His eyes met mine, and the rage in them made my breath catch. Someone wanted you dead. Someone with resources and knowledge of your route home. The implications crashed over me like a second accident. But why? I'm nobody. Just an assistant. You're a vein. He said it like that. Explained everything. One of the last of a bloodline that should have died out centuries ago. Your great-grandmother was a thorn in the council's side for decades. They thought they'd eliminated the line in 1952, the year my grandmother was born, the year her mother had died in what family legend called a tragic accident. You're saying my family was murdered. I'm saying your family was hunted. He leaned back, breaking contact, and I felt the loss of his touch like a cold wind. The veins had a gift, the ability to resist compulsion, to see through our glamours, to kill us if properly trained. The council couldn't allow that to continue. My hands were shaking again. I pressed them against my thighs, felt the torn fabric of my slacks, the dried blood. And you knew what I was when you hired me. Yes. Why? The question hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to examine. The car slowed, turned onto a road I couldn't see, just a gap in the trees that Silas navigated with absolute confidence. The forest pressed close on both sides, ancient pines that blocked out what little light the storm allowed. Because I'm tired of the council's games. Cyprian's voice had gone soft, dangerous. Because I've spent 2 centuries watching them eliminate anyone who might threaten their power. Because when I saw your application, saw your name, I thought. He stopped. Started again. I thought perhaps it was time to make a stand. Using me as bait. Protecting you. There's a difference. Is there? The anger surprised me, cutting through the shock and the lingering euphoria of his blood in my system. You put me in your office, in the center of your world, knowing someone would come for me. You made me a target. You were already a target. You just didn't know it. He turned away, staring out at the darkness. At least in my office, I could watch over you. At least there you had a chance. The car emerged from the trees into a clearing that shouldn't have existed. A mansion rose from the mountainside like something from a Gothic fever dream, all stone and stained glass and towers that clawed at the storm-dark sky. Lightning illuminated it in stark relief, and I saw gargoyles perched on the eaves, their mouths open in silent screams. "Home," Silas announced, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. The front doors opened before we'd fully stopped. More figures emerged, moving with that same liquid grace. A woman in a severe black dress, two men in suits that looked Edwardian, all of them with eyes that caught the light wrong, that gleamed with colors no human iris had ever held. Cyprian was out of the car before I could process the sight, reaching back to lift me again. I wanted to protest, to insist I could walk, but when I tried to put weight on my broken leg, the bone shifted with a grinding sensation that made my vision grey. "Not yet," he murmured against my ear. "Another hour, and you'll be mobile. For now, let me." He carried me up the steps, through doors that must have been 12 feet tall, into an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. The ceiling soared overhead, painted with frescoes that depicted scenes I couldn't quite pass, figures in medieval dress, battles, what might have been a coronation. Crystal chandeliers threw prismatic light across marble floors, inlaid with patterns that hurt to look at directly. The East Wing, Cyprian told the woman in black. The Blue Room, have Dr. Ashford attend to her. Dr. Ashford is in the city, Master. He won't return until dawn. Cyprian's arms tightened around me. Then I'll do it myself. Prepare the room, and Silas, double the perimeter guard. If Leander was bold enough to make a move tonight, he may try again. Yes, Master. Silas had appeared beside us, still holding that umbrella though we were inside now. Water pooled at his feet, but he didn't seem to notice. Should I summon the others? Not yet. I want to know how deep this goes before we show our hand. Cyprian started up a staircase that curved along the wall, each step worn smooth by centuries of feet. Send word to Marcus in Prague. Tell him we may need his particular skills. The names, the orders, the casual discussion of Prague, like it was across town rather than across an ocean. It all washed over me in a surreal wave. My broken body was healing with impossible speed. I was being carried through a vampire's lair by a creature who'd been alive when Mozart was composing. Someone had tried to kill me because of a bloodline I hadn't known was significant. And somehow, impossibly, the most overwhelming thing was the way Cyprian's heart wasn't beating against my ear. The Blue Room was actually blue, walls covered in silk damask the color of midnight, furniture upholstered in shades of sapphire and cobalt. A four-poster bed dominated the space, its curtains drawn back to reveal sheets that looked like they cost more than my car. Had cost more than my car. Past tense. My car was currently a twisted wreck at the bottom of a ravine. Cyprian laid me on the bed with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about predators. He stepped back, and I saw his control waver for the first time. His hands were shaking. His eyes had gone completely red, no white visible at all. I need to. He turned away sharply. I need a moment, Cyprian. He stopped but didn't turn back. Thank you for saving me. His shoulders tensed. Don't thank me yet, Eulalia. You don't know what I've made you. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. I lay there in the Blue Room, listening to the storm rage against windows that didn't rattle, feeling my bones knit and my flesh heal, tasting the ghost of his blood on my tongue. Somewhere in the house, I heard voices, low, urgent, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Footsteps moved overhead. A door slammed. My phone was gone, lost in the crash. My clothes were ruined. My entire life had just been revealed as a lie built on a foundation of murdered ancestors and supernatural politics. And I was alive. That was the thing I kept coming back to. I should be dead, should be cooling on a slab in the county morgue while someone called my emergency contact and tried to figure out how to tell my mother her daughter had died alone on a mountain road. Instead, I was here, healing, changed. The door opened again. Not Cyprian. The woman in black, carrying a tray laden with supplies, bandages, antiseptic, a bowl of water that steamed gently. She moved to the bedside with practiced efficiency, her face carefully neutral. "I'm Margo," she said, setting the tray on the nightstand. "I manage the household. Master Cyprian asked me to tend your wounds while he composes himself." Composes himself. Her lips thinned. "You're bleeding. He hasn't fed properly in 3 days. The combination is difficult for him." The implications settled over me like a shroud. I was prey, injured prey, and he'd just given me his blood, which apparently made me even more tempting. Will he? I couldn't finish the question. No. Margo began cleaning the gash on my forehead with surprising gentleness. "Master Cyprian has more control than any vampire I've known, but control has limits. It's better if he maintains distance until you've stopped bleeding." She worked in silence, cleaning and bandaging with the skill of long practice. The wounds were already closing, the healing accelerated by whatever was in Cyprian's blood, but she tended them anyway. When she finished, she stepped back, studying me with eyes that had probably seen centuries. "You're handling this well," she observed. "Am I?" My laugh sounded brittle. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." "That's normal. The first night is always the hardest." She collected the soiled bandages, the water now pink with diluted blood. "But you're stronger than you think, Miss Vane. Your bloodline didn't survive this long by producing weak women." She left before I could respond, taking the tray and closing the door behind her. The lock didn't engage, but I heard something settle against the wood outside. A guard, to keep threats out, or to keep me in. I forced myself to sit up. My leg protested, but held. The bone had set, though it ached with a deep grinding pain that suggested it wasn't quite finished healing. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, testing my weight. The room swam, not from injury, from exhaustion. The adrenaline was crashing, taking with it the artificial strength Cyprian's blood had provided. I needed sleep, needed to process, needed. The window exploded inward. Glass shattered across the floor in a glittering spray. A figure rolled through the opening, coming up in a crouch that was pure predator, male, dark hair, eyes that burned gold in the lamplight. Not Cyprian. "Found you," he said, and smiled with too many teeth. I opened my mouth to scream. He was across the room before sound could form, one hand clamping over my mouth, the other gripping my throat. His touch burned like acid. The little vain bird, he purred, his accent British and old. Cyprian's new pet. "The council sends their regards." He was going to kill me. I could see it in his eyes, in the way his fingers tightened incrementally on my windpipe. This was Leander. Had to be. The one who'd herded the deer onto the road, who'd tried to kill me once already tonight. The door burst open. Cyprian stood in the doorway, and the rage that rolled off him made the air itself seem to thicken. His eyes were pure crimson, his lips had pulled back from fangs that looked designed for tearing. Every civilized veneer had been stripped away, leaving only the apex predator beneath. The name came out as a growl. "Remove your hands from her." "Now," Leander laughed. The sound high and unhinged. "Or what? You'll start a war over one human. The council will destroy you." "The council can try." They moved simultaneously. Leander threw me aside. I hit the wall hard enough to crack plaster and launched himself at Cyprian. They collided in the center of the room with a sound like thunder, too fast for me to track. Furniture exploded. The floor cracked. One of them, I couldn't tell which roared with a sound no human throat could produce. I scrambled backward, pressing against the wall, watching as two immortal creatures tried to tear each other apart in front of me. They were matched in speed, in strength, but Cyprian fought with a focused fury that Leander couldn't counter. He drove the other vampire back, toward the shattered window, his hands finding Leander's throat. "You dare," Cyprian snarled. "You dare enter my home, threaten what's mine." Leander's response was lost in a gurgle. His hands clawed at Cyprian's face, drawing black blood that hissed when it hit the floor. The smell was overwhelming, copper and ozone, and something that made my hindbrain scream run. Then Leander's hand found something in his coat. A blade, silver, gleaming in the lamplight. "Cyprian!" My warning came too late. The blade plunged into Cyprian's chest. He staggered, released Leander, looked down at the knife protruding from his sternum with something like surprise. Leander bolted for the window. Cyprian took 2 steps toward me. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the rushing in my ears. His hand reached out, as if to touch my face one last time. Then he collapsed. The house erupted in screams. Footsteps thundered in the hallway, but all I could see was Cyprian on the floor, black blood pooling beneath him, his red eyes fixed on mine as the light in them began to fade. And Leander's laughter, echoing from somewhere in the storm outside, promising this was only the beginning. I threw myself forward, my knees hitting the floor beside him. The black blood was spreading too fast, soaking into the Persian rug, hissing where it touched the silver threads woven through the pattern. My hands hovered over the knife, afraid to touch it, afraid not to. Cyprian's voice was barely a whisper, but his hand caught my wrist with surprising strength. "Silver, it will burn you. I don't care." My other hand pressed against his chest, trying to staunch the flow. The blood was cold, viscous, nothing like human blood. It stained my fingers black. "Tell me what to do." His eyes were dimming, the red fading to something darker. Behind us, the door burst open. Silas appeared, his face white with terror, followed by 3 others I recognized from the estate staff. Not human. Never human. "My lord," Silas began. "Get out." Cyprian's command was weak, but absolute. "All of you, lock the doors. Leander will return with reinforcements. You cannot fight them. Seal the house and wait. But go." They fled. The door slammed shut. We were alone with the storm and the spreading pool of darkness and the silver blade that was killing him. He said my full name, each syllable, careful, precious. "Listen to me. The blade is lodged near my heart. I cannot heal while it remains. But if you remove it, I will need." He stopped, swallowed. "I will need blood. Fresh blood. A great deal of it." I understood what he wasn't saying, what he was trying to protect me from even now. "How much?" My voice was steady. Strange how calm I felt. How clear everything suddenly seemed. More than you can afford to give and survive. His hand tightened on my wrist. "I will not take it. I will not damn you to this existence. Better that I fade, and you run. Silas will help you disappear. The council cannot. Stop." I pulled my wrist free and reached for the knife. "Just stop. Eulalia." "No." I gripped the silver handle. Pain exploded through my palm, white-hot and immediate. The smell of burning flesh joined the copper ozone stench. I screamed but didn't let go. With everything I had, I pulled. The blade came free with a wet, sucking sound. I hurled it away, heard it clatter against the far wall. My palm was a ruin of blistered skin. Cyprian convulsed. The wound in his chest gaped, black blood pumping with each spasm. His back arched off the floor. The red in his eyes was almost gone now, replaced by something cloudy and distant. I didn't let myself think. I pressed my burned palm directly against the wound. His eyes flew open, locked on mine. I felt the moment his control shattered, felt it like a physical thing breaking between us. His hand shot up, gripping the back of my neck, pulling me down. His other hand caught my wrist, holding my bleeding palm against his chest. Lali, my nickname. A plea, a warning. Don't do this. Drink. I shifted, offering my throat. The pulse point where I knew he'd been staring for months. Please, Cyprian, drink. You don't understand what you're asking. I'm not asking. I pressed closer until I felt his cold lips against my skin. I'm choosing. I choose you. I choose this. Whatever comes after, I choose it. For one suspended moment, nothing happened. The storm held its breath. The house went silent. Even my heartbeat seemed to pause. Then his fangs pierced my throat. The pain was brilliant, sharp, a lightning strike that traveled from the puncture wounds down through every nerve, but it transformed almost instantly into something else, something that made my fingers dig into his shoulders, made a sound escape my throat that was neither pain nor pleasure, but both and neither. I felt him drinking, felt my blood flowing into him, warm life meeting cold death. The wound in his chest began to close beneath my palm, flesh knitting together with unnatural speed. His grip on my neck tightened. His other hand slid to my waist, pulling me fully against him. The room began to spin, or maybe it was just me, falling into the sensation, into the connection that felt like a door opening between us. I could feel his hunger, ancient and vast. Could feel his guilt, his self-loathing, his desperate need warring with his desperate love. Could feel the exact moment when survival instinct overrode everything else, and he began to take too much. My vision darkened at the edges. My limbs went heavy. Somewhere far away I knew I should be afraid. Should fight, should push him away before he drained me completely. But I didn't. I held on, held him, trusted him to know when to stop. The darkness closed in. My heartbeat slowed. Then his mouth left my throat. I heard him gasp, heard him curse in a language I didn't recognize. Felt him gather me up, cradling me against his chest. Foolish girl. His voice was stronger now, rich with power and anguish. Foolish, brave, impossible girl. What have you done? I tried to answer but couldn't form words. My lips moved uselessly. The room was very dark now, or maybe my eyes were closing. I felt him bite his own wrist, felt him press it to my mouth. Drink. His command echoed my earlier one. Drink, Lali. You've given too much. You need this. You need me. The taste of his blood was nothing like I'd imagined. Copper and wine, and something electric that made my dying nerves sing. I swallowed. Once, twice. Felt impossible warmth spreading through my chest, chasing back the cold. That's it, he murmured, against my hair. That's enough. Just enough to heal. Not enough to turn. I won't take that choice from you. Not like this. Not because I was too weak to stop. The world stabilized. My heartbeat strengthened. I could breathe again, though each breath pulled at the wounds in my throat. When I opened my eyes, his face was inches from mine, and the red had returned to his eyes, brighter than before, burning with inhuman vitality. You're alive. I managed the words, though my voice was barely a whisper. Because of you. He stood, lifting me with him, as though I weighed nothing. You burned yourself on silver, fed me your blood, drank from me. Do you understand what that means? The bond we've just... The window exploded inward. Leander came through in a shower of glass, no longer alone. 3 others followed, vampires I didn't recognize, their eyes hungry and fixed on us. On me, specifically, on the blood still wet on my throat. How touching. Leander's voice dripped venom. The mighty Cyprian St brought low by sentiment. The council will be so pleased to hear how easily you've broken your own laws, feeding from a human, creating a blood bond, all forbidden for one of your station. Cyprian set me carefully on the chaise, positioning himself between me and the intruders. I could see the change in him, the way he moved now, fluid and deadly, fully restored, more than restored. The power radiating from him made the air thick, hard to breathe. You made a mistake, Leander. Cyprian's voice was silk over steel. You should have brought more. What happened next was too fast for my human eyes to fully track. Cyprian moved like liquid shadow, like violence given form. He caught the first vampire by the throat, twisted, and I heard the snap of vertebrae. The second lunged at me, tried to, but Cyprian was there first, his hand punching through the attacker's chest and emerging with something dark and pulsing that dissolved into ash. Leander backed toward the window, his confidence cracking. The council will find your ashes scattered across my grounds. Cyprian advanced, each step deliberate. You threatened her. That was your second mistake, your last. She's made you weak. No, Cyprian smiled, and it was terrible. She's made me remember why I became strong in the first place, why I've survived centuries while others fell. Not through isolation, through knowing what's worth protecting. The third vampire tried to run. Cyprian let him get as far as the window before something invisible yanked him back. The shadows themselves seemed to reach out, wrapping around the fleeing figure, pulling him into darkness. His scream cut off abruptly. Leander was alone now, trapped. He looked at me, and I saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him weighing whether he could reach me before Cyprian could stop him. Don't. My voice was stronger now. Don't even think it. Cyprian struck. It was over in seconds. Leander's body hit the floor and began to dissolve, crumbling into ash that the wind through the broken window scattered into the storm. Then, silence. Cyprian stood in the center of the destruction, breathing hard despite not needing to breathe, his shoulders tight with residual violence. Slowly, the tension left his frame. He turned to me. It's done. He crossed to the chaise, knelt beside me. His hand cupped my face with infinite gentleness. The threat is ended. You're safe. We're safe, I corrected. My hand covered his. Both of us. He closed his eyes, pressed his forehead to mine. I nearly killed you, but you didn't. You stopped. I knew you would. How? The word was raw. How could you trust me with that? How could you be so certain? I smiled, tasting copper on my lips. Because I know you. Because I've seen you fight yourself for months, trying to protect me from what you are. Because love isn't about certainty, Cyprian. It's about faith. He kissed me then, soft and desperate, tasting of blood and rain and forever. Outside, the storm finally broke. The wind died, the rain gentled to a whisper. And in the ruined study, surrounded by ash and broken glass, I felt something settle into place, something that had been building since the first moment I'd walked into his office and met those impossible red eyes. What happens now? I asked when we finally broke apart. Now? He lifted me again, cradling me against his chest. Now I take you to my chambers. Tend your wounds properly. Let Silas know we survived. And then he paused at the doorway, looking down at me. Then we discuss your future. Our future. Because you've bound yourself to me, Lali. That blood bond will fade, given time, if we don't reinforce it. You can still choose a mortal life. I won't trap you. I touched the wounds on my throat, already healing faster than they should. Felt the lingering taste of his blood on my tongue. Felt the echo of his emotions still resonating in my chest. Ask me again in 100 years, I whispered. See if my answer changes. His smile was sunrise breaking over a dark horizon. As you wish. He carried me through the silent house, up the grand staircase to chambers I'd never seen. The four-poster bed was exactly as I'd imagined, dark wood and crimson silk and shadows that welcomed us home.